Hello students, I am Dr. Saleha Jamal, Faculty Department of Geography, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. So welcome to today's class. So today we are going to discuss the case study regarding the bushfire in Australia. What is the relationship between the climate change and the bushfire in Australia? So let us start the class. Before starting about the bushfire in Australia, it becomes very much important to understand about what is bushfire. A bushfire can be simply defined as uncontrolled fire in vegetation. When we talk about in vegetation, means it is a broad phase and it includes grass fires also, forest fires also, and even we can say it bushfire. So overall, it can be said that uncontrolled fire in vegetation, it may be in grasslands, it may be in forest or even in bushes. Overall, it is said as bushfire when it cannot be controlled. So, and there are various factors that elevate the probability of this wildfire hazards. And among those factors, the most important one are high temperature conditions, low humidity, lack of, we can say, recent rain or that uh, proceeds to, we can say, drier soil, drier weather condition, abundant dry vegetation that act as a fuel for the fire, and the stronger winds. These are few of the factors which elevates the probability of bushfire. And if you remember students, in the previous lecture, we have discussed that the long drought spells, dry weather condition and the rising temperature, these things fuels the forest fires, or we can say overall wildfire. So now we can say that climate change, due to the climate change, temperature is rising. That is what we are saying, that global warming is continuing. There is continuous rise in global temperature. On the other hand, in various places which are more vulnerable to drought, the drier periods are increasing as the time is passing on due to the climate impact. And another thing that is affected by this rising temperature, drought condition, dry weather spells for the longer duration, we can say, that desiccates the plants, that desiccates the moistures from the soil, which becomes fuel for the fire. So these all conditions altogether elevates the probability of wildfire hazards. Now, what are the different sources that ignite fires, whether we are talking about the fire, forest, bushes, or we can say grassland? There are some sources, and that sources can be classified into natural sources and human sources. If we talk about the natural source, somewhat we can give example of the lightning strike. That lightning strike may be dry lightning strike or maybe wet lightning strike, but most of the time it is dry lightning strike. That is the natural source. And as we talk about the human sources which can ignite fire in such vulnerable places, there are various sources which is derived through the human beings, just like discarded cigarettes. When anyone throws the cigarettes in the forest or bushes, etc., electrical faults may also contribute to this probability of elevating wildfires. Sparks from the power tools like welding, grinding, and even we can say sometimes deliberate ignition such as arsons also is responsible for the wildfires. So overall, while understanding what is bushfire and which are the factors that elevates these bushfires, so we can understand now that certain favorable conditions that contribute to the probability of this bushfire are hot weather condition, windy weather that will contribute in the expansion of the fire to the far off places, desiccated plants before the ignition of the fire which acts as a fuel for the fire. These all things we can say makes the region, the particular drier, most importantly, it can be said the most vulnerable is the drier region, drought prone areas. They become, due to these reasons, more susceptible for the initial combustion, and then it contributes to the rapid fire propagation and increased its intensity and severity due to the climate change impacts. Here you can see a very much ferocious picture how the bushfire looks like from far off. You can see huge plumes of smoke coming out, so much red color fires. You can see how ferocious the condition is. Anyone can imagine how much this hazard can impact, and it can turn into disaster by the loss of flora, fauna, overall ecosystem. We can say it can impact the air quality of the place, it can impact the water quality of the place. So just by seeing this picture, one can imagine its ill impacts. Now, as we are here concerned with the case studies in this series of lectures, and already we have done, if you remember, certain case study on glacial lake outburst, or we can say cyclones, etc. In this lecture, we have taken the bushfire, mainly that is of Australia. So, how climate change and is influencing the bushfire? It is said that climate change does not directly cause bushfire, but it can increase the intensity, frequency and severity of the bushfire. And as we are here concerned with the Australia has been undergoing increasingly severe heat waves, extended drought conditions that generate highly inflammable conditions. That's why we have taken Australia here as an example for the case study. Overall, it can be said that bushfires are multifaceted hazard. It is a multifaceted hazard, which means that it requires several variables for the emergence. If we talk about its ferocity, we can say that dangerous and hazardous bushfire weather is expected to worsen under the climatic change. Through this era we are going on, under this climatic changes, mainly the bushfire weather is expected to worsen. That's why it is said that climate change is not the direct cause, but it can worsen and increase the frequency, intensity and severity of the bushfire. The projections considered as the drought, here you can see, as the drought conditions are continuing in various places due to the decrease in the rainfall from the normal condition, decrease in the humidity, overall rise in the temperature, that is through the global warming we can say, and the wind, which also plays a very important role in the expansion of the fire to the far off places. These are all the projections which we can say, whether we are talking about the drought, humidity, temperature, wind, these all patterns are changing due to the climate change. That's why the climate change is related with the bushfire, the occurrence of the bushfire. Mainly the prolonged heat waves. If we talk about the heat waves of Australia, not only in Australia, we can you must have experienced the heat waves even in India also. So you are well aware about that, how much temperature rises from the normal condition, almost from 5 degree to 6 degree, the temperature rises from the normal condition, due to which heat waves occurs. So prolonged heat waves and droughts, these are the highly probable conditions under the warming climate that we are going through. Prolonged droughts, and we can say heat waves and rising temperature, these are all, we can say, highly probable conditions we are going through in this era of climate change, which will certainly lead to an increase of the frequency and intensity of the bushfires. Let us start and give an overview of Australia's bushfire problem. Before starting, first we will give a little overview about the climate and landscape, because the bushfires are very much related to the landscape and the climatic condition of a place. If we see Australia, we know Australia has a hot and dry climate, and hot and dry climate means the region will be highly susceptible to the bushfires. And if we see the Mediterranean climate, the Australia generally experiences the Mediterranean climate in the southern region. Mediterranean climate means with hot dry summers and mild wet winters. These places generally get winter rain, not the summer rain. So summers remains dry while winters are mildly wet. So this condition creates perfect situation for the fires. And even if we see the large portions of Australia, including forest, grassland, which act as a natural fuels for the fire. So actually we are here we are very much inquisitive about how climate change worsens the bushfire condition, or we can say leads to the probability of the bushfire. So here climate of the place and the landscape of the place play a very important role. And as we see in Australia, Australia has all its favorable condition, just like hot climatic condition, dry climatic condition. Even the southern part of Australia is having the Mediterranean climate, having dry, hot summers and mild wet winters. These are all favorable conditions for the susceptibility to the bushfires. Even if we talk about the landscape, we know that the large portion of Australia includes forest and grasslands, which act as a natural fuel for the fire. So let us proceed. Now, if we mark some of the areas of fire-prone areas of Australia, we see that New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia are the most bushfire-prone areas. It will be very much clear from this map. You see here, this figure shows the areas of Australia's east coast. East coast, when we are talking about, means we are talking about this Kangaroo Island and parts of Western Australia. When we talk about, this is the part of Western Australia. These two parts, the east coast and Western Australia, that is experiencing higher than normal forest fire danger index, FFDI. This is what we can say. This is FFDI, forest fire danger index. So these two regions of Australia, they experience a higher than normal forest fire danger index due to the abnormal climatic condition. So these regions will be more prone to the bushfire, because all the conditions which favors the or makes a region more susceptible and vulnerable to the bushfire, you can find here the dry weather condition, the drought climatic condition, we can say desiccated soil, plants. These all favorable conditions can be found in these places. If we see regarding the bushfires, the historical context of the bushfire, if we see, we know that it is very much prevalent and recurrent event in Australia. Bushfires, they reoccur at intermittently in Australia if we go through its history, and which has a major role in shaping the continent's landscape over millions of years. If we talk accordingly with the data, since 1851, bushfires have resulted in deaths of billions of animals, and we can say even the loss of flora and approximately 800 individuals in Australia. If we see the history, there are some marked extreme events of the bushfire. Here you can see the 5 most lethal fires are Gippsland Fire and Black Sunday of 1926 in Victoria. It almost took 60 deaths over 2 months. Again, if we talk about the Black Friday 1939 in Victoria, round about 71 deaths and 650 houses were destroyed. Similarly, if we talk about the Black Tuesday in 1967 in Tasmania, it took 62 deaths, nearly 1300 homes were destroyed. Ash Wednesday in 1983 in Victoria and South Australia, almost 75 deaths and 1900 homes were destroyed. Black Saturday 2009 in Victoria, 173 deaths and 2000 homes were obliterated. You can see the loss of life, the loss of property. In fact, when you see here the names, Gippsland Fire, Black Sunday with Air, Black Friday, Black Tuesday, Ash Wednesday, then you will realize here that severe firestorms are many times designated by the date of their peak occurrence. Some of the significant fires also include 1851 Black Thursday bushfire, 2006 December bushfire, 1974-75 fire that almost ravaged 15% of the Australia, and the 2019-20 bushfire. Here as a case study, we are going to take 2019-20 bushfires. So overall, by weighing these lethal events of the bushfire, now you may have understood generally the names are designated by the date of the peak occurrence. So let us take a case study of Black Summer bushfire that occurred in 2019 to 2020. If we talk about this bushfire season, which is known as Black Summer, it is one of the Australia's most severe devastating fire season that is quoted by the media. When I say Australia's most severe devastating fire season, it means devastation, disaster. Previously, in previous slide you have seen, I have shown how much houses have obliterated, or we can say destroyed, even the loss of life. But the loss is not just only restricted to the human life, or we can say house or property loss, but it is very much related to the many of the ecosystem deterioration, deterioration of the air quality, deterioration of the water quality, increase of the carbon emission in the atmosphere. That's why this bushfire of 2019 and 20, which is known as a Black Summer, is quoted by the media as one of the Australia's most severe and devastating fire season, because this event included a series of bushfires across several regions of the Australia, owing to their unprecedented ferocity, the severity, the scale and the duration, and its uncontrollable nature. It was classified as a mega fire also by the media, means its ferocity was very much high. If we see to the scale expansion in the area, it was very much, and it was of uncontrollable nature. When it becomes uncontrollable, then only we can say it as a forest fire, bush fire or grassland fire, whatever it is. So it is of uncontrollable nature. That's why media classified this bushfire event as a mega fire at that time. If we see the areas, mainly the central Queensland initiated the early wildfire, means the initiation of the wildfire started from the central Queensland, mainly in the season of June 9, 2019. The reasons of initiation of fire through this central Queensland in June 2019 are severely arid conditions in this region, which we have talked about in previous slides. Insufficient soil moisture because of high temperature, high rate of evaporation. When evaporation exceeds precipitation, the soil desiccates, means insufficient soil moisture, and premature flames. These are the few major regions which initiated early wildfire in central Queensland. Just you can here view the situation, the severity, the intensity of the bushfire. It looks so much hazardous that will lead to a severe disaster, loss of flora, fauna, deterioration of the ecosystem, etc. By seeing only, we can imagine how much ill impact it can occur to various aspects, maybe related with the flora, fauna, ecosystem, various communities, economy, etc. So, mainly the fire initiated from the central Queensland, and after that numerous fire raged predominantly in the country's southeastern region until May 2020. Means it started from June 2019, and with the time the several fire raged in different places, more particularly if we talk about in southeastern region. And in previous slide in map, if you remember, we have seen the southeastern region and Western Australia is more prone to the bushfires because of certain favorable condition that ignites fire. So the fire raged in mostly in the southeastern region until May 2020. Then fire reached to its higher scale, reached their zenith from December 2019 to January 2020. This is the higher scale, we can say the fire reached at its zenith from December to January, means December 2019 to January 2020, and it impacted various states of the Australia. If I quote here, it impacted New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Australian Capital Territory, Western Australia and Southern Australia. And already we have seen that in Southeastern Australia and Western Australia, there are the favorable conditions like dry weather, desiccated soil, desiccated plants, long duration of the drought condition. These all conditions factors favors and increases the susceptibility of this region to the bushfire. Now, if we analyze what are the causes, already we have talked about, but point by point we are here going to discuss about the causes of the bushfire. Then we see the historical drought condition prevailing in a particular region. If we see related to this bushfire event, that is of 2019 and 20, we see the years leading up to 2019 and 20 fire season, particularly from 2017 to 19, was marked by extreme drought condition. Means one of the favorable condition here, that is marked by the extreme drought condition. The rainfall levels across Australia was significantly low if we compare it from the normal average condition, especially in the southeastern region, which is very much prone to the bushfire. Even the lack of rainfall created parched landscape, means desiccated soil, desiccated plants, turning forest and the grassland just like a tinder box where easily the fire can ignite and the bushfire can occur. So one of the important cause is historical drought condition. Second, if we see on the data, that is the hottest year on the record. Australia experienced the hottest year on the record in 2019 with an average increase in the temperature of 1.5 degrees centigrade above normal. Means we are talking about the average increase of temperature either 1.1, 1.2, 3, 4. That is the average condition at global level, but itself in Australia that was the hottest year and it experienced 1.5 degrees centigrade of increase of temperature above normal. Not only this, it was also accompanied by several heat waves. That these heat waves swept across the country, pushing the temperature beyond 40 degrees centigrade in many of the areas. So second important cause is hottest year on the record. This will become very much clear if you see here how the rainfall decile ranged in 2019 from January to November. If we see, mainly this figure shows significant large portions of Australia undergoing either below average, very much below average, or lowest on record the rainfall throughout the January to the 19. It means almost, see, large portion of Australia, all these portion, this reflects the below average or very much below average rainfall received from January to 19. Third important condition is wind-driven fire spread. It means high winds. Particularly if you're talking with context to the Australia, the northerly winds. We talk about the northerly winds that from the outback, where one of the major reason for spreading the bushfires. So these winds fan the flames across vast distances, rapidly moving the fires from one area to the another area. Means these winds actually caused spotting. Spotting is a, if we see spotting, it is a phenomena where the embers of the fires are blown ahead of the main fire spot or fire front. Means the embers, due to the wind, they blow ahead of the fire front, which ignites fires kilometers and kilometers away from the original blaze. This situation creates creates a difficult scenario mainly for the fire crews to control the fire. So wind driven fire spread is also one of the major reason or cause for the bushfire. Another reason, if we comes how the fire ignites, that is the dry lightning strikes. If we go to the natural causes, the dry lightning strike, dry lightning actually means lightning without accompanying the rain. This is also one of the major cause of fire during the black summer. Second, we are talking about the most important thing, how climate change is impacting the bushfire. So actually climate and fire specialists are of the view that the climate change contributes to heighten the fire frequency and the intensity and the severity, mostly in the most vulnerable areas like southeastern Australia. While it should be regarded as, it should means climate change should not be regarded as the sole cause of bushfire in 2019-20, but climate change is deemed highly likely to have influenced their extraordinary scale and severity. So we were talking about the dry lightning. So this image shows the dry lightning, means the lightning without accompanying rain. This image shows clear view of dry lightning. Now, what were the impacts of the bushfire? As we know, when the bushfire strikes, the direct impact we can see in the loss of flora and fauna. Overall, it can be said as biodiversity loss, because large stretches of forest, grasslands, bush areas are destroyed, which will certainly lead to habitat loss and even the loss of overall, we can say, flora and fauna. Many species like koalas, we know when we talk about the Australia, we generally talk about the koalas and kangaroos. So koalas and kangaroos and many of the native birds face displacement, not only displacement but several injury or even death also. This bushfire also impacts the ecosystem, because we know forest after the bushfire or forest fire, the forest ecosystem will face long recovery periods. Means why it faces long recovery periods? Because of destruction in the soil structure, destruction of the vegetation, and even the carbon storage capacity is being destroyed. So it will face long recovery period. Not only this, even the wetland degradation takes place due to the fire runoff and the ash pollution also, which disrupts the aquatic ecosystem and also deteriorates the water quality. Thus, it impacts the ecosystem also. This is a very heart-touching picture here. You can see how a dead bird, Australian native bird, is seen on ashes. You can see really a very heart-wrenching photograph how this native bird is seen on ashes on the ground near Eden, Australia of January 7 of 2020. So the impacts can be seen on the biodiversity loss, ecosystem deterioration, air and water quality also, because huge plumes of smokes are released in the atmosphere, increasing the carbon content in the atmosphere, and it creates a feedback loop mechanism, means increases the carbon content in the atmosphere, which in turn it will lead to increase in the greenhouse effect, which will lead to the global warming, means more increase in the temperature, which will again create a more susceptible or favorable situation for the forest fires, means a type of feedback loop is created. Not only this, air pollution, even waterways are also polluted by the ashes, debris, leading to the poor water quality in the lakes, rivers, dams. Further, it will impact the aquatic life and even the human beings who are dependent on these water supply. So what I have said about the carbon emissions, it creates a somewhat feedback loop mechanism with the increase of carbon content in the atmosphere. See this picture. A thick plume of smoke rise from the bushfire at the coast of East Gippsland, Victoria, Australia, January 4, 2020. So, by seeing all this picture, it becomes very much clear the ferocity, the scale, the severity of this bushfire. Economic and human impacts. If we talk about the property damage, almost 3,000 homes were destroyed in this event of the bushfire. Damage to the agriculture exceeded almost $1.6 billion, means farmers faced enormous losses. Significant livestock death have been reported. The crop destruction have been reported. And if we talk about the human life, 33 people lost their lives directly, but hundreds and hundred people suffered with many of the injuries. It also affected the air quality, smoke related issues. If we talk about respiratory problems, most of the people, they suffered from several respiratory problems. Overall public health problems have been reported. For weeks, major cities like Sydney, Canberra recorded air quality indexes over the hazardous level. Not only this, it impacted, but it also impacted on the tourism economy also. Not only in the agriculture economy we are talking about, but it also impacted the tourism economy. It was estimated that the losses reached up to $4.5 billion due to the fire devastation. So you must have understood what were the reasons, which are the factors which favors the bushfire. Actually, what is the bushfire? What are the factors which favors the bushfire? And as we have taken the example from the Australia, because reoccurrence or either we can say frequency of bushfire is very much high in the Australia, that's why we have taken this as a case study. So seeing its climatic condition, or we can say landscape, how these climatic conditions and the landscape favors or we can say that these regions become susceptible to the bushfires, and what are its impact and how it is very much related to the climatic changes. So that's all for today's lecture, students. Have a nice day. Thank you.